Mr. Grimes sits in the old ice wagon on the side of the road with old shotgun. There the old man and his horse await the arrival of the three. He being informed of the need of his wagon to retrieve a new window pane to replace that which was shattered the night before. The old iceman inquires as to the early release of the children, whereupon young Perkins relates in detail the frightening episode that had earlier occurred. The conversation turns to the supernatural. The old iceman, Mr. Grimes, leaves the group spellbound as he relates chilling tales that he and Shotgun had experienced during their travels. He spoke of ghostlies, ghoulies, and long-legged beastlies, and things that go bump in the night. He spoke chillingly of fog-shrouded nights, where he and Shotgun found themselves lost within an eerie green mist, a mist so thick that they traveled in near blindness. The sound of the horses' hooves on the hard ground, preventing the wagon from straying from the path and stumbling into the surrounding mire of the swamp of the dead, its name resulting from the many reports of ghostly encounters by travelers who found themselves surrounded by ghastly specters of blind spirits. Spirits that weep and moan as they aimlessly wander in search of the living. Mr. Grimes spoke of an encounter he and Shotgun had as they traveled late one night where the potter's field stood. The iceman spoke of seeing something eating what to him had the appearance of a body part, perhaps a human arm. Whatever the animal was, the old man couldn't quite describe. Anyway, me and old Shotgun ain't going that route no more. Passing the sundown sign marking the town's entrance, the wagon at last reached the front of the old ice house. Mr. Grimes would never travel beyond the boundaries of the ice house. He had no intentions of entering Musky's interior. He despised the town. He knew the horror that stood brooding in the center of the town's square. Pulling up in front of the ice house, he declares, "Well, here we are." Whereupon the three exit the wagon and proceed in the direction of the general store. The sound of old Shotgun pulling up to the ice house brought out the usual group of whites, who began to converse with the old man. All the while, Mr. Grimes presenting a smile as false as his teeth. Every time young Perkins entered Musky, he would be assailed by a sickening feeling, especially after the night he and Jonah had defied the sundown law. Pastor Jackson found it strange that an intruder would attempt entry at a home while illuminated and activity perceptive inside. When the widow spoke with the pastor, she merely informed Pastor Jackson that there had been an intruder. Concerned, he followed the young widow to her home. There he saw the dried blood and broken glass. The pastor also saw the inhuman footprints the creature left behind. He knew that it was no mere burglar, no simple thief. Pastor Jackson thought that the two were hiding something from him. He was certain that whatever it was that lurked near the widow's house was something extremely dangerous. Though there were signs of blood, the pastor believed that they were under some sort of demonic assault. They would have to wage a spiritual war. Pastor Jackson again questions young Perkins as to what had truly transpired. Young Perkins again resorts to evasive subterfuge. His dishonesty only adds to frustrate the pastor. The three stand before the open door of the general store. An old hound dog lay in the doorway, lazily sunning itself, while a small group of poor whites sit atop wooden barrels that rest against the wall of the country store. Seeing the three who remain standing at the entryway, a half-drunken cracker calls to the storekeeper, "Hey, Bob, there's some negras outside." Thereupon, the storekeeper questions, "What y'all negras want?" "Window glass," shouts the pastor. Thin white lips pucker around a large chaw of chewing tobacco. Chewing a bit, then spitting into a nearby spittoon. Giving a sigh of exasperation, the storekeeper yells, "Well, Come on in." Noticing the group's attempt to enter, the lazy hound slowly rises and lopes away, allowing them entry. The group enters the store, where at the side of the room 2 elderly white men sit in rocking chairs, engaged in a friendly game of checkers. "Window glass, you say?" inquires the storekeeper, who once more spits in the spittoon. "What size?" 3 feet long by 2 feet wide, expresses Pastor Jackson. His eyes run the length of the shelves, examining the various sundries. 2 of the deputy's sycophants had noticed the group as they entered town. Apprehensive of the pastor's intentions, the 2 young toughs decided to follow. Walking up the porch of the country store, the 2 young whites stand just inside the entryway. Their eyes gaze lustfully at the young widow. Ignoring their gaze, she casually saunters across the room and begins examining the various reams of fabric on the shelves in the women's section. Young Perkins pays no notice. He, instead, eyes the colorful assortment of candies displayed within various glass jars. 2 feet by... what? Questions the store clerk, only half listening. 3 feet by 2 feet, replies the pastor in a loud voice. "Watch your mouth, boy." The clerk, obviously angered by the pastor's bellicosity. Pastor glares unafraid, stalwartly staring back. Taken aback by a Negro displaying such true grit, forces the clerk into the back room in quest for said glass. The clerk, all the while grumbling. The pastor's commanding voice gains the attention of all, plunging the store into dead silence. The 2 young toughs, standing sentinel at the door, began whispering to each other. Whereupon the 2 men rush from the confines of the country store, their steps echoing in the direction of the pool hall.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a source that feels, well, less like a simple story and more like a carefully constructed framework of dread set deep in the American South. We have this single, really intense narrative excerpt called Musky's Shadow, Terror and Sundown Law.
Yeah, and this narrative is brilliant because it just refuses to let you, the reader, neatly separate the threats. It's this compelling blend where the supernatural dread is thick enough to cut, but then the immediate systemic malice of the town's inhabitants feels even more, well, sharp, razor sharp.
Right, so our goal today is really to give you the shortcut to understanding the mechanics of fear in this world. We're unpacking the multiple layers of terror set up in Musky. You've got the chilling folklore, you have immediate evidence of some kind of non-human threat, and then there's this rigid, often lethal social conflict, all shaped by secrecy and the strictures of the Sundown Law.
That sundown law is absolutely foundational to this specific kind of horror. It dictates exactly who can be in town after dark. It's a clear, enforced mechanism of, well, exclusion and control. So we'll follow the journey into Musky, detail the specific evidence of these hidden horrors that actually prompted the visit, and then really analyze that intense, emotionally charged confrontation at the town's country store.
Okay, let's start with that journey itself. What's fascinating here is how the source immediately establishes boundaries, right? Both physical and psychological. The trip is necessary because a window got shattered the night before, and the group, that's Pastor Jackson, young Perkins, and the young widow, they rely on Mr. Grimes, the old Iceman, and his horse shotgun for transport.
Grimes is, well, he's our unreliable Terrifying guide. He sets the psychological tone right away, even before they hit the town's human hostility. He keeps the group sort of spellbound with these chilling tales of ghostlies, ghoulies, and long-legged beastlies and things that go bump in the night. Standard spooky stuff, but delivered by him.
And the physical setting is just designed to ramp up that terror, leaning heavily into those Southern Gothic tropes we expect. They're traveling almost blind, apparently, engulfed by this eerie green mist, relying only on the sound of shotguns' hooves to avoid, like, the deadly mire of the Swamp of the Dead.
Exactly. And this oppressive environment, it serves as a narrative frame. The source makes it pretty clear the swamp's name isn't just for show, it's earned. It's reportedly home to these ghastly specters of blind spirits that weep and moan as they aimlessly wander in search of the living. You know, the fog, the mire, the blind spirits. It's all about disorientation, the fear of what you can't see. The author is sort of psychologically weakening our protagonists before they even face the known human enemy in Musky proper.
But it's not just the purely spiritual dread, though, is it? Grimes gives them proof that the physical world is also actively hostile. He shares this specific, really gruesome horror story. Recounting an encounter near the potter's field where he saw something, he couldn't even describe the creature, eating what looked like a body part, perhaps a human arm. Ugh.
And that juxtaposition is absolutely key. You have these ethereal, moaning, blind spirits on one hand, and then this animalistic, flesh-eating physical threat on the other. It just deepens the dual nature of Musky's menace. Like you're threatened whether you can see the danger coming or not.
And all this mounting dread, it just culminates at a single, literal signpost, the town boundary. Grimes makes it absolutely clear he will not pass beyond the old ice house, just past that sundown sign. He openly hates Musky, claiming he knows the horror that stood brooding in the center of the town square. He feels it.
Yeah, and we really need to analyze that moment when the group gets out of the wagon and meets the local usual whites. Grimes puts on a smile as false as his teeth.
Yeah.
That false smile. It's a critical indicator of the performance required just to survive there. Grimes, despite his open hatred, knows he has to conform to the town's social rules while he's doing business, even on the boundary. He survives by playing the role they expect, which contrasts really sharply with the pastor, who, as we'll see, later refuses to perform.
So the group leaves the, relative safety of the wagon, crossing that invisible line. They're moving from the realm of the physical and spectral threat into the core of the systemic one. But their immediate task is complicated by what happened before the broken window. That's where the hidden horror lies.
That's right. Young Perkins immediately feels this sickening feeling just entering Musky, and it's a feeling magnified by his guilt. Because he and another person, Jonah, had previously defied the sundown law. So that past defiance is just hanging over this current, seemingly innocent trip for a window pane.
And the shattered window itself, that's the immediate source of conflict, isn't it? Pastor Jackson investigates the damage. He sees the dried blood, the broken glass. But he's suspicious. Like, why would a simple burglar strike a home when the lights were on and people were clearly active inside? It doesn't add up.
Right, and the evidence turns it from just a break-in into something, well, far darker. The key detail is Pastor Jackson seeing the inhuman footprints the creature left behind. He concludes right away this was no mere burglar, no simple thief. Something else entirely.
Let's pause on those footprints for a second. That's a brilliant narrative choice by the author, I think.
Yeah.
The blind spirits are pure supernatural dread, right? Ethereal. But the inhuman footprints, that's physical evidence, a tangible link to some kind of alien presence. It confirms the threat is something that can bleed, leaves physical traces, but is distinctly not human.
And this evidence immediately causes deep internal conflict. Pastor Jackson concludes that Perkins and the young widow are hiding something crucial about what happened. But despite the blood and the physical evidence, the pastor frames it theologically. He calls it a demonic assault requiring them to wage a spiritual war. It feels like his way of coping with a threat that's both physically real and morally unexplainable.
But the immediate war seems to be against the truth, doesn't it? When the pastor presses Perkins about what really happened that night, Perkins again resorts to evasive subterfuge. He's trying to hide the fact that he and Jonah broke the sundown law. Maybe he knows or fears that their defiance actually led to the creature's attack, validating their fear of the town's rules in the most brutal way possible.
Exactly, and his dishonesty just fuels the pastor's mounting frustration.
That internal secrecy, that performance and deception, it drives them right into the next layer of danger. The confrontation at the country store. which is like the social nucleus of Musky.
Yeah, Perkins is trying to manage this internal boundary of truth, just like Grimes managed the external physical boundary of the town.
Okay, the scene inside the store, it's set up with this kind of deceptive rural tranquility. The group stands at the entryway. There's a lazy hound dog sunning itself. Inside, small groups of poor whites, a couple of elderly men playing checkers. Seems calm.
For about 2 seconds. Then that calm is just instantly shattered by their presence.
The immediate open hostility is just stark. It's vital for establishing the stakes of that sundown law. A half-drunken cracker, seeing them, announces them to the storekeeper.
He says, "Hey, Bob, there's some niggers outside."
Yeah, and the author's choice to use that aggressive, derogatory term is immediately effective. It's not just rude, it's a narrative device to enforce the power dynamic instantly. It labels them as outsiders, as threats, setting the terms of engagement right there.
Precisely. And Bob, the storekeeper, responds with undisguised suspicion and antagonism. What y'all niggers want? The social boundary is enforced with every single word. Deference is expected, demanded really, and the lack of it is immediately read as aggression.
But Pastor Jackson refuses to play that game. He doesn't defer, he doesn't engage in small talk, he just bypasses the whole social expectation and shouts his request. Window glass! Anchor even specifies the size. 3 feet long by 2 feet wide. Very direct.
And this is the absolute critical moment of tension. The clerk is described, thin white lips puckered around a big chaw of chewing tobacco, spits into a spittoon, sighs with exasperation. He doesn't just object to the request, he objects to the manner of the request, the lack of subservience.
So when the clerk only half listens and asks for the size again, the pastor repeats it just as loudly. And that's the moment the tension just snaps. The clerk gets angry at the pastor's bellicosity, his open show of confidence maybe, and yells back, "Watch your mouth, boy."
Right. This is the heart of the systemic conflict. The pastor, despite the clear existential risk, refuses to perform the expected servility. He glares unafraid, stalwartly staring back. Now, I have to ask, is this defiance truly true grit, like the source suggests? Or is it a foolhardy escalation that puts everyone in danger? The text frames it as heroic, but the lethal context of Musky makes it seem incredibly risky.
Yeah, it's a huge gamble. But regardless of how you assess the risk, the action actually works, at least momentarily. That nonverbal, stalwart defiance, it commands attention. It shifts the power just for a second. The clerk is forced to retreat, grumbling into the back room to get the glass. And the entire store just plunges into dead silence. You could hear a pin drop, I imagine.
But the threat is only paused, right? It's definitely not eliminated. While this whole exchange is happening, 2 young toughs enter the store. They're identified specifically as deputy sycophants. They had apparently followed the group, and their presence just symbolizes the imminent intervention of state-sanctioned violence, the system kicking in.
And the description of these guys is critical, too. Their eyes gaze lustfully at the young widow. It emphasizes this parallel, predatory human menace that kind of mirrors the unknown creature outside. They represent the organized, malevolent human aspect of the town's power structure.
And we see the mechanism of systemic terror deploy immediately. They witness the pastor's defiance, they see the clerk back down, they whisper to each other, and then they immediately rush out of the store. Their footsteps echo towards the sheriff's office. Defiance has been noted, and it's met not just with a verbal retort, but with an official alert. The engine of the sundown law has just been engaged.
Wow. So, okay, we've navigated the swamp of the dead, evaded these moaning blind spirits, dealt with evidence of a creature leaving inhuman footprints, survived a verbal assault at the country store. But now, the systemic threat, the human-enforced one, is actively mobilizing against them.
And that's the core tension of Musky's shadow, resting right on that synthesis. You have this dual threat, the spectral blind spirits and the tangible, unknown creature, coexisting side by side with the stark, dangerous, very human social hostility governed by the sundown law.
The fear is structured by both the known and the unknown, it seems. Perkins' secrecy about defying the sundown law is his attempt to manage the unknown consequences of their past actions. But the immediate reaction of the townsfolk, the clerk's rage, the sycophants rushing straight to the sheriff, proves that the human enforcement of terror is organized, it's immediate, and potentially far more lethal than any unseen spirit.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we know the creature leaves inhuman footprints, right? Implying it's a physical, maybe alien threat, something that had to break a window to get in. But the sundown law operates differently. It doesn't leave footprints, it leaves deputies.
Which really raises a critical question for you, the listener, to maybe ponder as this narrative unfolds. In a town like Musky, where both these forces dictate terror, which is the greater danger, Is it the unseen horror, the one leaving traces but operating outside the system? Or is it the organized, state-sanctioned enforcement that immediately mobilizes to eliminate defiance? Which threat is ultimately more predictable, more dangerous?
Definitely something to consider the next time you encounter a place where both the local legends and the local laws seem designed specifically to instill fear. And that's probably all the time we have for this particular deep dive into Musky's shadow.